As the trade war between China and the U.S. heats up with China's recent announcement of a new $75 billion tariff on U.S. goods, the Canadian consulate in Hong Kong has suspended work travel to China for local staff. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in Ottawa just a few days ago, and he assured Prime Minister Justin Trudeau the American government will continue to pressure China to release 2 Canadians who have been detained for more than 8 months now. So what exactly is the U.S. doing to help free Canadians Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor amid its own economic battle with China? Joining me now is Morgan Ortagus, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. Welcome to the show, Morgan.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure when we get a chance to speak to Americans about Canada-U.S. relations. And of course, the Secretary of State was here in Ottawa speaking with our Prime Minister just a couple of days ago. He was reassuring Canadians that China and the issue of the 2 detained Canadians is at the top of the agenda for the American government. Can you tell us exactly what the United States is doing to try to put pressure on China to see those Canadians released?
Yeah, so first of all, I was with the Secretary in Ottawa. It was lovely to be back. I love being in Canada. We have such a close relationship with the Canadians on not just political, but on economic areas, on military areas. It's one of the things that I always glean from our meetings when the Secretary is meeting with the Foreign Minister and with the Prime Minister, of course, is just the number of areas around the world in which that we work together. What a special and close relationship that it truly is. As it relates to China, I think the Secretary was very clear that this is an incredibly important topic because what we're talking about is, as it relates to the 2 detained Canadians, is the rule of law. And this has ramifications not just for Canada, but this has ramifications for countries around the world. Clearly, the Chinese see an opportunity when they can find it to arbitrarily detain people, to beat up on countries that they may perceive to be weaker, maybe in their estimate. And so what's incredibly important for America is that we're standing up for our allies, that we're standing up for our friends, but most importantly, that we're standing up for international norms and for the rule of law. And that's something that we fight for every day and will continue to do so.
Does that extend, Morgan, beyond just words, beyond just raising it? Does there have to be a consequence for China to deter them from doing this kind of thing now and in the future?
I think that there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. There's only so much that we can, of course, preview. And you know, it's interesting. Sometimes when people ask me, well, what is the administration going to do beyond words? And I have to remind people that here at the State Department, what we do in our embassies around the world, as it relates to international relations, is advocate for our position. And so when we are conducting diplomacy, that is the work of the State Department, and that is the work of enforcing the rule of law, and that comes in various ways of pressuring, of exposing things. It's important for us. Words are important. When you say just words, let me just challenge you on that for a second, because words are important. It's important to shine sunlight on the aggressive behavior of the Chinese, of the Communist Party of China. You know, there are many American companies, there are many Americans that go to China every day, right? And there are American companies that do business there. There's a number of issues like related to North Korea, for example, where we work very closely with the Chinese. But words are important, and shining light on bad behavior is important because you have to call that out and name it and shame it when it happens.
Morgan, one of the things that the United States has been calling for is for countries that have had foreign fighters fighting with ISIS to repatriate them and bring them home. One of the challenges we've had with that in Canada is the ability to prosecute them. Our justice system requires a certain level of evidence that hasn't been there in some cases. And as a result, we've had literally dozens of these fighters who allegedly were involved with ISIS come home and not face charges. One, when he faced charges, only faced 4 months in jail. Has the United States considered that bringing these people back to Western countries could pose a national security risk if they can't be prosecuted?
We certainly have, but we would also say that the situation is also clearly untenable, and that's why individual countries are going to have to deal with this. We've brought a number of these people back to the United States, where they're in our judicial system being prosecuted as well. And so, no matter what country it is, whether it's Canada, whether it's Europeans, wishing this problem away or keeping them where they are now is not something that can be sustainable for the long run. And so that's why we're encouraging countries to think about this. This is one of those very hard problems that's not going away, and not dealing with it is not going to stop the issue from remaining.
It's certainly a topic of hot debate here in Canada, but I imagine one of the concerns for the United States might be that if these ISIS fighters are brought home to Canada and our justice system is not able to effectively prosecute them, are you worried they could cross the border into the United States?
Well, that's one of the reasons why one of the number one priorities of this president is border security, of course. But I also say, I can't speak to your judicial system and how your government is going to deal with this issue. But I would say that every government, including ours, are going to have to continue to find out ways to prosecute these people. We're going to have to work with our European allies. I think it's going to take all nations coming together to find the appropriate solution. But I think that the president and the secretary have clearly, laid out that they don't think that the status quo is something that can continue.
Turning to Venezuela, a place where Canada and the United States have had similar policies in terms of concern and recognizing the opposition, becoming the official government. Is there a red line there for the United States? I know that President Trump has said that all options remain on the table. At what point does the current containment policy become insufficient? And is there a willingness to go beyond that into military intervention?
Well, listen, I won't speak or preview what options the president will or will not take. He has said that all options are on the table, and so therefore I would take him at his word. But I'd say the thing that we are focused here at the State Department and what the Secretary Pompeo, speaks with your foreign minister about quite regularly is how we restore democracy to Venezuela. That's what is incredibly important here, and that we have to remember is that the Venezuelan people have had their democracy stolen from them. You have a former and illegitimate person, Maduro, who's still claiming some remnants of power. And we will use all forces that we have at our disposal to solve this peacefully. That is the goal of the State Department, to return democracy to Venezuela and to solve this peacefully. And then the president can look at a variety of options that he may have. And of course, one of the things that I'm very encouraged by is the support of interim President Juan Guaido, what he's received from the Lima Group, from OAS, from Canada, from the United States, and that regional support and really that global support from nations around the world for interim President Juan Guaido is so important, because that is the first step to get towards real and meaningful elections and to restoring democracy in Venezuela. And nothing is more important than that goal.
Morgan, thank you very much for joining us today.